Wait, hold on, stop. I know what you're about to do. You're about to dislike the video on principle because you're tired of YouTubers overextending and making definitive statements on things they know nothing about. And if it's any consolation, I'm inclined to agree with you. So allow me to present you with this. It's me at a Smash Ultimate tournament. Here I am, so young and handsome and full of hopes and dreams. And here I am getting wafted at 40%.
Oh my god, Mitsu!
Cool. I still won the set though. I've been to a handful of Smash Ultimate tournaments. I've been an occasional commentator and general community member since the game came out, but I certainly haven't been around as much as I was during Smash 4, which I started entering and competing in January of 2016 and never really looked back until the game was dead. And without trying to toot my own horn too much, I think I got reasonably good at the game. I never hit my goal of being power ranked top 15 in my country, England in case you can tell, but I came close on a few occasions, and considering that I mained Falco for whatever reason, I think that's pretty good. Here I am, so young and handsome and full of hopes and dreams, and here I am dying and losing grand finals because I tried to combo Rosalina.
Onto the platform. No! Not again! The moment he went up to get him, I saw Luma move frame 1 and it was just over. Can we get a hug for my man LT Brad? Can we just get a hug for my man LT Brad?
Cool. I only tell you all this because I want you to know that I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just some schmuck trying to get views. I am some schmuck trying to hate on your favorite game. Jokes aside, don't misread the title. I'm not trying to say that Smash Ultimate is a failure. It clearly isn't. I am instead going to talk about where I find it deeply disappointing as a competitive game. If I'm sat here analysing Smash Ultimate as a party game, as a casual game, really as anything other than a competitive fighting game, it's unbelievable. Far and away the best in the series. The level of content that is in this game should literally not be possible, and I mean this with no exaggeration when I say that this is the kind of Smash game that I have literally dreamt about, okay? I'm not ashamed to admit it. When my actual dad, King K. Rool, was revealed for the game, I cried a little bit, okay? Sure, it's sad to see trophies go, and World of Light is a bit of an underwhelming single player mode, but you get why things had to be this way. In terms of sheer numbers, this roster is unprecedented, and all of the new characters added into the game are so cool. Not you. The amount of music and stages in the game, hell, even the UI and menus are a huge step up from Smash 4. But that's not what we're talking about today, and unfortunately for me personally, as far as Smash Ultimate as a competitive game goes, it's possibly the single most disappointing experience I've ever had with any game. When Ultimate was revealed, I was so excited. It was honestly like being a kid at Christmas again. I was counting down the days to release. Time was moving so slowly for months on end while I waited for this game. And when I played it for the first few months, I tried to like it so much. I've never wanted to like a game as much as this one. But sadly, as a competitive game, I think it has some major flaws that not enough people are talking about. So I'm gonna talk about them. It's time to look into things. Too much. Before I really get into the meat of this video, there's a few things that I want to make clear. So, firstly, I am aware that this video, by concept alone, is going to be very contentious. I would politely ask that you save any disagreements or any dislikes until you've seen the whole video. There is a huge part of me that isn't going to enjoy making this video, because when I was a tournament competitor in Smash 4, we endured this kind of stuff all the time. People criticizing our game, hating on it. Generally, we had to deal with tons of elitism. I really don't want this video to come off like I'm being one of those guys. This is intended to be a reasonably nuanced and even-handed critique of Ultimate. Finally, I'm about to talk about some pretty complicated stuff. If you've never played a Smash game competitively or a fighting game competitively, then this first section might make your head spin a little bit. I know I said earlier that I know what I'm talking about, but this might be the part where I make a couple of mistakes, and if that's the case, then I will either correct myself in the comments or on screen. I will clearly communicate when a correction needs to be made, because I've I've had to do a lot of research for this video. I've done a lot of conferring with my good friend Scarfelt. You can find their Twitter here, and I will put it in the description below. They're a lot smarter about the game than I am, and I've basically had to use them as like a fact checker, but then there's only so many questions you can ask before you feel like enough of a nuisance to just kind of look stuff up for yourself. So don't blame them when I mess stuff up, which I probably will. Here's a really funny clip of them dying. Alright, it's finally time to talk about the single biggest contributing factor to my general apathy for competitive Smash Ultimate: control. In any game in which you will be pushing a bunch of different buttons in rapid succession, control is extremely important. If you listen to almost any game design discussion around, say, platformers, you will hear talk of how control is the single most important thing to nail in a platformer. You will probably hear the same thing about fighting games, and the first problem occurs here because Smash is both of these things. And it controls really quite badly. Smash Ultimate is the fastest and most aggressive Smash game since Melee, which is lauded as the competitive peak of the Smash series because of its aggression and speed, as well as its ridiculous ceiling for technical optimization. Unfortunately, on top of being the fastest and most aggressive game since Melee, Smash Ultimate is the clunkiest and most unintuitive feeling Smash game ever. Speed does not equal fluidity. If you don't know what the phrase game feel means, well, you do now, because it's the most self-explanatory thing since oranges. They're orange. Smash Ultimate, as far as I'm concerned, has all the game feel of trying to push something on wheels on like a really stony path. How many times have you been playing Smash Ultimate and made an input and it seems like the game just does something completely different, or it forces you to do something that you never even input in the first place? If, like most people, your answer is a lot, then it's likely due to one of two things. The first thing being the buffer system, and this is where, as I say, things might get a little bit complicated. Almost every conventional fighting game has what's called a buffer system. So Smash Ultimate has a buffer window of 9 frames. What this means is that if you perform an action and then within 9 frames before that action ends, you input another action, the game should automatically perform that action for you. I'm not an expert, but I would assume that buffer systems are put in place to help players perform complicated inputs, combos, and strings whilst still maintaining some level of accessibility. It basically means that players don't have to do everything frame perfectly. So the buffer system that I've just explained is what I'm going to call, for the purposes of this video, a traditional buffer. You get a certain window of a few frames, perform an action within that window, and then the game should do that for you automatically as soon as it is able. Here's the thing, this is not the only kind of buffering that Smash Ultimate has. It also has what's called a hold buffer, which is a different way to effectively queue up your moves so that the game automatically does it as soon as it can. To my understanding, the way that the hold buffer works in Smash Ultimate is that if you hold the input for an action at any time while another action is happening, as long as you're still holding the input for that action within 3 frames of the other action coming out, it should work. I don't know how common it is for other fighting games to have a hold buffer, or for them to have both the traditional buffer that I talked about earlier and hold buffer, but I do know that Smash Ultimate is the first Smash game ever to have hold buffer. Now, having both kinds of buffering by itself is not exactly a huge issue. The biggest problem caused by hold buffer is how easy it is for the game to mistakenly input a roll or a spot dodge when you hold the shield button in any direction in the air. There's a guy called DJ Ted, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but he did a really great video on Ultimate's buffering system. His section on the hold buffer and dodge buffering will probably explain this problem better than I ever could.
The next feature I want to discuss is how shield and dodge buffering is handled. In Smash 4, if you were to full hop, double jump, air dodge, and continue to hold the button you used to air dodge, and then hold either down, left, or right, and continue to do so as you land, all that will happen is that your shield will pop up as soon as you land, and your shield will be tilted towards the direction you are holding. Nothing too unexpected. In Smash Ultimate, if you were to follow the same procedure of inputs, you full hop to apex, then double jump, do a neutral air dodge immediately, and continue holding the dodge button, then hold a direction immediately after you neutral air dodge, and then land. You will find that you would do a roll or spot dodge instead, even if you started to hold the dodge or shield button more than a couple seconds earlier. This is just one of many examples of how insanely large the buffer window is for dodging. It's basically infinite.
The real problem, in my opinion, is how the game's buffer systems interact with a new mechanic that was introduced in Ultimate. This one.
You short hop attacks by pressing the A button and jump at any time.
The saddest thing about the easy short hop aerial mechanic is that it was clearly implemented with good intentions. Sakurai and the design team clearly recognized the importance of short hop aerials across all Smash games competitively, and they wanted to make it easier for everyone to do. Unfortunately, by doing so, they have greatly hampered the game's control. So, in Smash Ultimate, only one action can be buffered at a time, and if you happen to buffer multiple actions, then the game needs some way of deciding which action it will perform. In Brawl, you could buffer multiple actions and the game would perform them all at the same time, which, as you can imagine, created some pretty wacky tech. And in Smash 4, much like Ultimate, you could only buffer one action at a time, but the game would choose the most recent action that you buffered to perform. Ultimate is a bit different in this regard. Ultimate chooses which buffered action it performs via this thing called the order of priority, which I've realized while recording audio for this video spells out OOP, which is extremely appropriate for what I'm about to explain to you. OOP! As you can probably infer from the name, this is a list of actions that you can buffer in order of priority. But here's the weird part. Chilling out right at the very top of the order of priority list is short hop aerial, which probably raises a lot of questions. I just said that only one action can be buffered in Smash Ultimate at a time, and a short hop aerial is very clearly a combination of two actions. It's a jump and an attack. So you can't buffer dash grabs or dash attacks or other stuff like that that is technically two actions, but you can buffer short hop aerial. It's the exception to the rule because it's treated by the game's buffer system like it's one action. I can only assume that this is because, like I said earlier, Sakurai and the design team wanted to make short hop aerials easier for everyone to do. So on the order of priorities list, short hop aerial is higher than jump and attack are as respective actions. And you know what this means, right? It means you can't buffer full hop aerials, because you'll buffer a jump, see that your jump is coming out, go to buffer an attack, and the game will go, oh, attack and jump within a reasonable amount of time of each other? Short hop aerial coming right up, completely regardless of how hard you're pushing the jump button and how long you're holding it for. And this is a really big problem. Whilst not as universally important as short hop aerials, full hop aerials are still a massive part of the game. I'll use Greninja as an example, okay? I mained Greninja when the game first came out, and Greninja is a great example of everything wrong with the game's control system. So if Greninja hits most characters with a down tilt at about 120 to 130%, it should true combo into a full hop forward air for a kill. The window is generally pretty tight, but if you're precise, it should always work. However, I cannot buffer that full hop forward air. If I tried to do so, the game will instead give me a short hop forward air. It's not exactly a one frame window, I don't know how much it is, but it's very precise as is, and now the game is demanding even more from you, and not in a cool, skill-intensive way, but in a frustrating, inconsistent, why is the only thing I'm fighting in this game the controls kind of way. Full hop aerials are crucial in juggling, pressure in high places, reading your opponent's jumps. They are crucial in so many ways, but because of the way that the buffer system interacts with the easy short hop aerial mechanic, it literally just doesn't even function in these specific moments of gameplay. To my knowledge, there are some fighting games out there that don't have a traditional buffer system, and they're pretty skill intensive for it. Because the lack of a buffer is consistent, players have been able to work with that and be as precise as the game asks them to. Smash Ultimate is on a totally different level. For about 75% of the game, it has the most generous buffer system of any Smash game, to a fault. It literally creates extra problems. But then, there's another 25% of the game where it just doesn't work. That is not the cool kind of precision that a game can expect from you. But wait, there's more. Did you know that for whatever reason, whenever you buffer a short hop aerial, whether intentionally or not, the game decides which aerial you perform, not based on the direction that your directional stick was facing when you buffered the move, but on the direction that your directional stick was facing when the move comes out. So let's say that you're Snake and you've just taken a hit on your shield. You're probably going to use down air as your out of shield option. Assuming that you're playing on tilt stick, your input is simply jump and down on the C stick. However, you likely start holding forward on the directional stick so that you can drift forward with said down air, and as a result, you get forward air. There's a lot of cases where someone doesn't need to drift in any direction with their aerial, so they leave their directional stick in the neutral position, and regardless of which direction they push on the C stick, they get given neutral air. This is why a lot of people complain about accidental and misinput neutral airs in this game, and why they say that the C stick outright doesn't work, because yeah, in a lot of cases, it just doesn't. Do you see how this makes no sense and is so so unintuitive. A fighting game or a platformer, whatever you want to call this game, should not control like this. Many people speculate that this is either just a bug or a big design oversight. It obviously needs to be changed. Same thing with the whole short hop aerial mechanic thing. I'm not saying remove it from the game entirely, because I'm sure it helps quite a lot of people perform short hop aerials more consistently. A very simple and elegant change that a lot of people have suggested is to just give us the ability to turn it off. This would be huge for the game's buffer system and general feel. It's not exactly all bad. Some of these things have come together to help create attack cancelling, which is a pretty cool tech, and hold buffer is occasionally quite useful, but for the most part it's a huge blight on the way that the game controls. Like I say, it just feels like you're fighting against the game to make it do what you want all the time. There are quite a few little workarounds to a lot of the issues that I've just brought up, and some people would say, hey, you know, these things are problems, but you can just get used to them. And you know what? They'd be right. I could just get used to them. I could get used to having a peg leg. I could get used to shitting out of my mouth. It wouldn't be remotely fun or enjoyable, but I could get used to it. There's so many things that I don't even have the time to touch on in this video about how, like, the new buffer system also makes dropping through platforms really unnecessarily hard, and it just complicates so many basic actions that were so easy to perform in Smash 4 and even in previous games. There's tons of other great videos on the buffering system of Smash Ultimate by people like Scarfelt and DJ Ted, whatever it is. I'm gonna link them and every other video I use footage of in the description, as I always do, because I have other things that I want to talk about and they explain it in much more depth than I do. It's a real shame they couldn't have just replaced the buffer system with a buffet system, right? So you could eat all you want instead of having Smash Ultimate do the wrong input for you. Look, I spent like half an hour trying to write a fucking buffet system joke. Oh, also, I consulted a lot with my good friend GP for the control section of this video. Here's a funny clip of him dying. Oh, that's it! Alright, now let's talk about point 2. This is design and balance. With Control, I'm pretty sure I could argue that Smash 4 was an objectively better game, and it's a large part of the reason that I significantly prefer it as a competitive game over Ultimate. Whereas when it comes to design and balance, I'm not even going to try and pretend like Smash 4 did it better, right? Like, I love Smash 4, but it was definitely quite the mess as far as design and balance is concerned. There was almost always some ridiculous top tier completely dominating the meta, and towards the end of the game, it was worse than it had ever been. Then you combine that with Rage, which, for those who don't know, was a mechanic where you did dramatically more knockback based on how much damage you'd taken. You had characters like Bayonetta, Rosalina, Zero Suit just killing people off the top at absolutely absurd percents with moves that just didn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah, it was bad, and the way that Ultimate handles Rage is probably the single biggest piece of credit I can give it. I think it handles Rage pretty much perfectly, actually. Rage is still in the game, but it's toned down significantly to the point where it very rarely feels like you got cheated when you die. You very rarely die at completely unreasonable percents. Generally, the game feels a lot more fair. Smash Ultimate's DLC has not even finished releasing yet at the time of the recording of this video, and it's already a much better balanced game than Smash 4 was by the end of its lifespan, which, when you consider how much larger the roster is by comparison, is an extremely impressive feat and definitely something that is worthy of praise. This game has about 80 playable characters, and a lot of them do feel reasonably viable. Fun fact, I was so confident that Snake would not be coming back in the next Smash game because of all the Kojima-Konami controversy, that I made a bet with my friend that if Snake came back in the next Smash game, I would literally eat my own shit. So you can imagine my reaction when he popped up in the E3 Everyone Is Here trailer thing. Obviously, I am still yet to eat my own shit, but I am a YouTube channel with under 1,000 subscribers, so I basically eat shit every day. There's not one sole character at the top completely dominating the metagame, and there hasn't really been one at all since the game came out, which is good. There's still time for it to improve even further, so yeah, good stuff there. However, the question we need to ask ourselves is, these good characters, how cool and interesting are they? And unfortunately, my answer to that would be not very. Almost every viable character in Ultimate is viable for one of two reasons: because they have one or two ridiculous all-purpose moves that they can use in almost every scenario, or because they have some silly gimmick attached to them that makes them powerful in an over-centralized way, but not in a balanced or interesting way, and completely changes the face of the game when it comes into play. Palutena, Ike, and Mr. Game & Watch are all great examples of that first category. Palutena's neutral air is one of the most egregious moves ever conceived in a Smash Smash games. Some Palutena players will try and tell you that it's not even her best aerial, and they might be right, but no other move in the game is this good in this many situations. It can be used in neutral, it's a great edge guarding tool because of how many active frames it has, and for the same reasons it's also very good for ledge trapping. It combos into itself, its generous hitbox size means it's a viable anti-air tool, it kills reasonably early, it can walk your dog, it can get you a date, and it can tuck you in bed at night and it will give you a little kiss on the forehead and say, it's okay, you don't have to think. Characters such as Joker and to a lesser extent Wario are all great examples of that second category. Joker is a below average character for the entire game, and then he summons Arsene and just becomes ludicrously broken to the point where a lot of players have just had to resort to running away and camping him for the duration. Wario Waft is, well, you know.
Oh my god, Mitsu!
The viable characters in Ultimate that don't fall into either of these categories are actually reasonably cool. Unfortunately, there's like 3 of them, and they're not as good as the others. Before I carry on, I just want to intrude this point real quick and say that I am absolutely not trying to say that this is a Smash Ultimate exclusive problem. This has been a problem in every Smash game. It was significantly worse with characters in Brawl and Smash 4. If I thought that the design and balance of the characters in Ultimate was the only problem, I wouldn't have even made this video in the first place, right? Smash 4, I love Smash 4, you know, Smash 4 is my baby, but I would never try and defend its characters from a design and balance perspective. I mean, beyond oppressive top tiers killing you at sub 30%, you also had characters like DK and Bowser who weren't good at all, and then they got buffed to have grab confirms, and they were pretty much only good because they could grab you a lot and do stupid damage off of that, and it was the most like one-dimensional thing ever. I loved it, they were really fun to play as because they controlled well, but yeah, I would never try and defend them from a design and balance perspective, or Lucario, or Luigi. Ultimate's top tiers probably wouldn't seem so boring and one-dimensional if the meta was shifting a little more often, and we regularly saw new contenders rise up in the metagame to challenge them. The design team have clearly been making a concerned effort to balance the game. Pichu and Olimar were 2 pretty ridiculous characters who were nerfed accordingly, and I think now sit at a pretty reasonable place in the metagame. But I think it's fair to say that we'd all rather see characters get buffed than nerfed. Characters have been buffed, but they've generally meant nothing, and a lot of the buffs given to low tier characters have been outright silly. Instead of fixing some of these characters' fundamental flaws, the game's patches have only improved what was already good about previously weak characters and not addressed anything meaningful. Donkey Kong can't land, his disadvantage state is awful, and almost none of his moves are safe on hit, but his forward tilt, one of his best moves already, now goes a little bit further, so you're welcome. Dr. Mario has horrendous airspeed, and coupled with his absolutely pitiful recovery, he struggles to make it back to stage from almost any meaningful distance off stage. He doesn't have the mobility or maneuverability to take advantage of his strong attacks. So your fix is up B for us, right, Nintendo? No, that's not what I meant, don't make it stronger. When a Dr. Mario main wins EVO 2023 solely by pushing up B and killing his opponent at 30% every time he touches his shield, I'll have to eat my words. 5 years later, Nintendo will have finally created a new top tier character in Smash Ultimate, and he will be just as one-dimensional and over-centralized as a majority of the others. Because not only are the buffs the patches are bringing us not working and not changing anything meaningful about the metagame, but they're generally the wrong buffs. If a lot of the characters Nintendo have tried to buff actually do end up getting better, then they are poised to become gimmicky 1 or 2 button messes like a lot of the currently viable characters. Much like Smash 4, being an absolute travesty of design is not limited to being a good character. Meet Luigi. He's bad at almost everything, but if he grabs you once, you might just die at 0, which encourages players to not fight him and to just camp and run away. Meet Hero. Okay, a sick part of me actually thinks that this character is really cool, but don't tell anyone. I obviously don't mean to imply that I think no character should have any flaws. It's okay, and it makes for some very interesting characters. Smash 4 Sheik by the end of the metagame was a really cool and interesting character because she had a blatant weakness in her struggle to kill, but she was so good at everything else. It's okay for characters like Cloud and Dr. Mario to have bad recoveries if they're strong enough in other areas to compensate, but also no character should ever have a move like this, or like this. Help him! The thing is that the dev team have shown that they can make really graceful and appropriate changes to a character when necessary. I think current Pokemon Trainer is a really cool character and one of the most well-designed good characters in Ultimate. Most people would probably say that Pokemon Trainer is around high tier, maybe debatably top tier. They haven't really moved much on the tier list since the game came out, but they have had significant changes. In the early days of the metagame, Pokemon Trainer was pretty much exclusively good because of Ivysaur. Squirtle was okay, but sending out Charizard was like a death sentence. Ivysaur was just so much better than the other two. He had a projectile, he had range, he had kill confirms, he had everything. So the dev team did something really interesting. They simply nerfed Ivysaur and buffed Charizard, making the character pretty much the same level of viability that they were before, but also a much more well-rounded and interesting character as a result. And that's great, in my opinion, a near perfect change. If the dev team ever change Joker, I really hope that they don't just nerf the character outright. It would be much more interesting and elegant, in my opinion, to just nerf Arsene and buff base Joker to make the character, like I say, more interesting and less over-centralized on this one factor of their gameplay. I understand why the dev team are being a bit more conservative with their patches this time around, because they don't want another Smash 4 where some patches just kind of throw the metagame into haywire a little bit. I get it, but at the same time, Smash 4, you were frequently seeing top players forced to pick up and try out new characters and counter picks, and things stayed interesting, if not a bit messy. But as I move away from characters and start to talk about some of the more fundamental changes to the mechanics, I will reiterate that the design and balance of the characters by itself is not a huge problem. I would never have made this video if that was the only problem, and I don't think it's just that contributes to the game, in my opinion, being a lot more boring than Smash 4 as a competitive game. I want to first start off by saying that Smash Ultimate makes quite a lot of good changes that I quite like. The removal of the random untechable spin animation is pretty much an objectively good change. I like that you can't tech grounded spikes in this game. It makes a lot of spiking down airs and forward airs that were previously only really good off stage if you wanted to try and style on your opponent, viable on stage as well as like a combo starter. I would have no issue with rolls getting laggier if you use them excessively if the hold buffer didn't make it so easy to accidentally buffer a roll when you land. Much like the easy short hop aerial mechanic, a lot of the changes made in Ultimate were clearly made with good intentions to give the players what they wanted, the fastest and most aggressive game since Melee. And in order to achieve this, quite a lot of changes were made to shields. So in every previous game apart from Melee, dropping your shield took 7 frames. This kind of made it so that bringing up your shield and generally playing defensively wasn't really much of a commitment. Dropping shield in Melee takes a whopping 15 frames, and Ultimate sits at a pretty nice sweet spot between all of these at 11 frames. Again, not a problem in and of itself, but then you add in the increased shield damage and shield stun that most moves in the game do, combine it with the game's finicky buffer system, and you have dilemmas like Snake's up tilt. When Snake up tilts your shield, you take an immense amount of shield damage and shield stun and get pushed back a bit, so almost no character is going to be able to grab Snake for this. You're probably going to have to buffer an aerial out of shield, but because you're stuck in shield stun for so long, well, that's a lot of time to change the direction of your directional stick in the hopes that you'll drift into him with your aerial of choice. That's a hell of a lot of time for the game's buffer system to completely misinterpret what you want to do. Yet another basic action that was significantly easier in previous Smash games that is now made way harder by Ultimate's control system. Again, I get why shields were nerfed and why they are this way in Ultimate, because people want less defensive play. And I would agree with these changes if the mechanic that was seemingly intended to combat the weakness of shields, parrying, was really worth it. Parrying, in my opinion, is a great mechanic in concept, but it just doesn't really do enough, does it? It's really good for countering an obvious close range attack and getting a huge punish for it, but what about multi-hit moves that can completely trip you up? What about projectiles? Parrying does nothing about projectiles. The ineffectiveness of parrying combined with the weakness of shields is probably why zoners and projectile characters like Rob and Pac-Man are better than ever in this game, which is something that people seem to dislike quite a lot. A lot of people have suggested making parrying reflect projectiles, which I think would be a great change. The final thing I'll say about shields is that initially I also really liked the change that you could no longer run through your opponent's shield. I always found that pretty frustrating to deal with and quite inconsistent in Smash 4, but I've since learned that it was based on characters' ground speed, which in a way is kind of a shadow buff to the already good fast characters, but it opened up a lot more options and it made neutral feel pretty interesting and diverse. Yet again, it's the combination of these shield issues with another core issue of the game's mechanics that contributes to it being a lot less interesting than other Smash games in my opinion. So let's talk about movement, or the lack thereof. I feel like people often mistake speed and aggression for style. I don't think Smash Ultimate is anywhere near as stylish a game as Smash 4 was, even though Smash 4 was a lot slower, and in the case of quite a few matchups, quite a lot more defensive. Let's first just address Perfect Pivot. I loved Perfect Pivot. I used Perfect Pivot all the time in Smash 4. If you didn't know what it was this really sick movement option where you flick the directional stick and you do like a tiny little side step out of the way and face the opposite direction. And you could combine this with tilts for some really cool stuff, really cool expressive movement. It opened up so many options items without feeling oppressive and overtuned. It wasn't the easiest thing to do in the world, but it was easy enough. Much like running through shields, Smash Ultimate does not have perfect pivoting, which is a big loss to the game's movement, but it does try and implement dash dancing like Melee had, which would be pretty cool if it worked the same, but Smash Ultimate's dash and run mechanics are quite a lot more restrictive than Melee's, and as a result, it's really just nowhere near as good. It's like a fringe option in some cases. Ultimate does provide players with the ability to do tilts, jabs and other attacks directly out of a dash, which is pretty cool, and it makes way for pivot cancelling, which is a pretty cool tech in my opinion. It's where you flick the directional stick back and forth while inputting an attack on the C stick, and you get like an extra little slide on it. But your initial dash before you break into an outright run is really quite short in this game, and so I don't think it's quite as applicable as the design is intended. Between the lack of ability to run through your opponent's shield, the lack of perfect pivot, the relative ineffectiveness of dash dancing, and the limited nature of tilts and attacks out of a dash, I think that most of the time Smash Ultimate's neutral ends up looking more or less like this. Players just kind of run back and forth near each other in a straight line for a while until one decides to go in with their best aerial to see if they get lucky and win the button lottery. It's aggressive and usually fast paced, sure, but I don't think that necessarily equals interesting or stylish. I don't really feel like I hear anyone else saying this, but I can't help but feel that Ultimate actually gives us less options than the previous Smash games, which in my opinion results in this neutral game that kind of looks like two goats just running at each other in a straight line and butting horns. And because of this kind of cocktail of changes that has mostly taken options away from players, I think this is a really unexpressive Smash game. If you compare two high-level players playing the same high or top tier character, I don't feel like you often see much difference in their play, and not through any fault of their own, they're just doing what's optimal as the character. But in Smash 4, if you had both, say, Mr. R and Void play default color Sheik, and there was no way of seeing their tags, so you couldn't tell who was playing, I feel like I would still be able to tell who was playing through their play. There would be marked differences in the way that they play the game, because the game has enough options and opportunities for expression for them to be different. They implement different movement options and different tech, and the game controls fluidly enough for them to do exactly what they want all the time. Same if you compared Larry Lur's Fox with Light's Fox. I feel like there were clear differences in their gameplay that they were able to express through the mechanics, and I don't think there's anywhere near as much space for that in Ultimate. There's less tech, there's less movement options, and it seems like the most effective tactic is to just put your best move on shield and space it as best you can and see what happens. Directional air dodges are something that people have wanted back in Smash since Melee, and the design team clearly heard their cries and put them back in. That's pretty cool. And it'd certainly be fair to say that air dodging was quite a bit too powerful in Smash 4. You could do it as many times as you want in the air and just kind of spam it. So I like that you can only do one directional air dodge before landing and that they have tons of end lag. Unfortunately, much like the way that a lot of this game's fundamental mechanic changes have made the game's neutral a lot less interesting, I also think that the addition of directional air dodging has only really served to make the game's advantage a lot less interesting, because air dodge reads were some of the coolest and most skill intensive things in Smash 4.
Whatever. Oh.
But he's still got that one bad habit. Oh!
God, I was so cool. When someone read and punished an air dodge in Smash 4, it felt big. It was like the player knew that they were in their opponent's head, and it enabled so many sick plays. And yet again, because of this change and because players can potentially air dodge in so many different directions, it's almost impossible to read and punish consistently, and as a result, you see a lot less cool stuff, I think. Finally, Ultimate has more moves than ever that bury you, a mechanic that basically forces you to mash as hard as humanly possible so that you can escape before you eat a huge punish. Yes, there are alternative and more effective ways of mashing to escape than mashing the face buttons on your controller, but for players who don't know that yet or don't feel like completely destroying their directional stick, this means the buffer system has an absolute field day with picking random shit that you don't want it to do to perform as soon as you escape, probably causing you to eat another even huger punish than you would have taken in the first place if you just let yourself stay buried. Not exactly fun, and I kind of wish they would all go away. Now then, the last segment of this video is going to be significantly shorter than the previous two. This is online. It sucks. I don't have any stats or facts or statistics for this section. If you've played Smash Ultimate Online, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The online in this game sucks. If you can believe it, it was worse before, because if you jumped onto Quick Play looking for a match with a competitive rule set, as in no items, Omega or Battlefield variant, no smash meter and all that stuff, one-on-one, sometimes you could still randomly just be thrown into a free-for-all with other players with smash meter and items on a non-tournament legal stage. You could literally just not be given what you you specifically searched for. Thankfully, they seem to have at least fixed that problem, but Smash Ultimate's Wi-Fi still remains pretty awful. Connections are just very rarely ever good on quick play, and if they ever are, then you combine that with the buffer system, which you might notice keeps coming back over the course of this video, wonder why that is, and the game still just kind of feels pretty awful regardless of how good your connection is. Battle arenas are pretty cool, but again, at their very best connection-wise, the game still just doesn't feel good. I didn't even know what netcode was before Ultimate came out, but I do now because I've specifically heard it in reference to how bad Smash Ultimate supposedly is. I assume, and have seen a lot of speculation online, that this is mainly really to do with Nintendo's awful online service that hasn't been good since the start, still isn't good, and continues to fail games like Smash Ultimate. Basically, if you can't attend tournaments all the time and you're looking primarily to improve over Wi-Fi, well, good luck on fighting the world's most uphill battle. I actually can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Smash 4's Wi-Fi was better. If it wasn't, then it felt better because you didn't have to contend with Wi-Fi in combination with awful control. There it is again. Whew. I have to admit, I did not think I would be here for this long. If you don't mind hearing me out, I have just a couple more things to say before I go. Firstly, I hate doing all this call to action shit because it feels so cheesy and see-through, but more than ever, I would really appreciate your likes or comments or shares, whatever it is on this video. For one thing, because I worked way harder on this video than anything else I've ever done on the channel. It took me way longer to do than even the Pokemon Black and White video. But also, as I kind of hinted at earlier in the video, I'm pretty sure that this video is going to attract a lot of hostility and hate because of the subject matter and because I'm criticizing something that a lot of people really like. To which I would say, I didn't really want to make this video either. I did and I didn't. You know, I'm really passionate about this series. Smash 4, when I was competing in it and I was playing it competitively and hanging out with the community and going to events, it honestly got me out of some pretty dark times in my life. So to see its sequel in a competitive sense be such a bitter disappointment, in my opinion, obviously got me pretty down. But the thing is that there is still a lot of time for this game to improve, and frankly, I don't think enough people are giving honest, genuine criticisms of this game. People either don't want to hear it because they're sick of Smash games catching heat, which I get, or they're just kind of trashing on it senselessly, you know, and I think we need to find a good middle ground if we're to have any hope of Nintendo noticing our criticisms and addressing them. So yeah, any support you can give would be greatly appreciated. I guess I'll go ahead and plug the Patreon again. I really am doing some pretty cool stuff on the Patreon. It would be worth your money. I am optimistic about the future of this game. I think that it has so much potential. It just needs a few important tweaks that I'm worried Nintendo might not give it, but if they do, it can seriously be so amazing. Just look at this game, man. Look at the content and the way it looks. Look at how much potential there is to be by far the best Smash game ever in both a casual and competitive sense. I just want it to be better. I know it can be, and I really, really hope it gets there. And with that, I am finally done, and I will speak to you again soon.